The final evolutions of the starter Pokemon are some of the most anticipated new Pokemon in every generation, and seeing them for the first time either fills you with immense joy or immense disappointment. For those times of immense disappointment, I have got you covered, because I'm going to be giving some new, awesome evolutions to starter Pokemon with bad evolutions. The bad evolutions I'll be covering today are, of course, just a matter of opinion, so keep that in mind as we go along, but with that said, let's get started. The first starter evolution I'm going to replace is Cinderace. As far as I can tell, Cinderace does seem to be a fairly unpopular starter, and personally, I really don't like it because I just don't feel like the design was executed very well. It doesn't seem like it tried very hard in blending in all of the soccer elements in its design, and in my opinion, it just feels like that whole idea was poorly executed. So I wanted to change that by giving Raboot a completely different evolution that can hopefully live up to its potential this time around. And Dominaire is what we have come up with. For this evolution, it's based around the theme of an athlete in general as opposed to a soccer player, in order to differentiate it from Cinderace. And the goal with this overall approach was to incorporate these elements in a more natural, sleeker looking way that doesn't have the basic, uncreative kind of vibes of Cinderace. And personally, I think Dominaire accomplishes that well. It also does something that I think Cinderace should have taken advantage of itself, while also addressing a common critique of the Galar starters as a whole, and that is their monotypings. Pretty much everyone was disappointed that none of these Pokemon gained a new type upon evolving into their final stages, and it's especially disappointing for Cinderace because it could have done something incredible with its dual typing that I have rectified here with Dominaire, as I have given it the Fire-Electric type. This type combination is meant to represent its status as an athlete, and it does it perfectly because the fire type represents the fiery passion that athletes have while out on the field, and the electric type comes from the electricity that fills a stadium during a thrilling game or match. So it's a type combo that fits these Pokemon wonderfully in my opinion, and is also just super cool in general. Name-wise, Dominaire comes from dominate and hair, which combines a sports-related term with a rabbit-related term, which is something that the names of Scorbunny and Raboot also do. Overall, I personally feel like this would have been a way better way to go than what we ended up getting with Cinderace, and it's definitely the kind of thing that I would have preferred for Scorbunny's final evolution. The next starter I want to tackle now, though, is Meowscarada. This is another starter that I personally don't think was executed very well at all, and personally, I'm just not a fan of the design. I know there are others out there that feel the same as well, so I wanted to give Florigato a new evolution that could maybe solve some of Meowscarada's problems. And with that said, I would like you to meet Ferronox. In explaining how this design came about, it started with what I wanted to address in Meowscarada's design. I know it's always a hot button topic, but I am not a fan of how Meowscarada tried to do the bipedal humanoid thing. It's not inherently a bad thing, it just has to be done really well to work in my opinion, and here, I just don't think it was done well. However, Florigato already transitions to the bipedal look in its second stage, so I feel like I was kinda locked into that for a final evolution. So in figuring out how I could make that better, it actually ended up coming together pretty naturally. A big reason why Florigato is bipedal in the first place is because it takes a lot of inspiration from Puss in Boots. That is a good justification for a bipedal design as well, in my opinion, so instead of pivoting to a random magician motif like with Meowscarada, I decided to hone in on the Puss in Boots idea and really just flesh it out in the final evolution. For Ferronox's design, another layer of inspiration that I added as a result of that was a cat burglar, since it obviously goes well with the cat theme, but it also fits well with the Puss in Boots inspiration too. From there, I also incorporated the classic black cat trope and their association with the more unsavory. This, I felt, not only worked well, but also allowed me to give this Pokemon a dark color scheme, which I felt was something that could help it to better pull off the bipedal look and just look cooler in general, but also at the same time still be fitting of its inspirations, and with its grass dark typing, which it does retain from Meowscarada. The name Ferronox also comes from feral, as in a feral cat, which felt like it fit with these dark type vibes, and it also comes from nox, which is the Latin word for night, which also helps with the dark type vibes, but also feels like it fits in pretty well in the Spain and Portugal inspired region of Paldea, where Sprigatito obviously comes from. So while I might end up getting some hate from those that like Meowscarada with this whole rant, if you will, I personally feel like Ferronox would have been a way better evolution for Sprigatito. And as always, if you enjoy these Fakemon videos, you can help support the production of these Fakemon designs through my merch store. It is a great way to support the channel, and you also get something great out of it too. There's plushies, there's cards, the Folkachi plush even comes with a limited edition promo card, and it's all super duper high quality. The plushies are super soft, the cards are also tons of fun to open, and they honestly look great. So if you would like to check that out and pick up something, you can do so with the link in the description. It is immensely appreciated and literally helps to make these videos possible. Moving along from Meowscarada though, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the grass types and now look at Serperior next. Now, I don't necessarily think Serperior is straight up bad, but I've always felt like it was kinda plain and just doesn't really have that wow factor that you want to see in a final starter evolution. So this new evolution for Servine that I have created was all about giving it a little more wow factor, and Skeleton is what I came up with. Also, big shout out as always goes to Rgreywind for drawing the artwork of these designs, and as always, you can check him out if you would like with the links in the description. Now, since I was going for some more pizzazz with this evolution, there was one thing that came to mind that I thought would make for the perfect inspiration, and that is the Quetzalcoatl, aka the Feathered Serpent. Not only is the Quetzalcoatl a deity in Mesoamerican mythology, but it's usually depicted as being very striking and colorful, so I thought it would be able to provide that exact kind of jolt that I feel like this Pokemon needs. As a Feathered Serpent, it also enabled me to give Skeleton the grass flying type, and that lack of a dual type with Serperior I feel like is something that contributes to the plainness of this Pokemon that I've mentioned, and therefore this is something that allows me to address something that I feel like could be improved with this evolution. Additionally, the extra Feathered Serpent bits that have been added onto this design help to do that as well, I think. So overall, I feel like it's a pretty cool way for a Snivy evolution to go, especially because it also retains the cultural aspect of each of the Unova starter evolutions, since as I mentioned, it is now based around Mesoamerican culture. In terms of the name Skeleton is an interesting one, admittedly, but I think it's also got a decent amount of cool etymology to it, as it comes from scale, referring to the snake origins, heaven, which is referring to the flying type, as well as the deity status of the Feathered Serpent, and then, coincidentally, putting these two together ends up creating the word leaven, as in leavening bread, which basically means to raise or to rise up, which is also, incidentally, consistent with the flying type Feathered Serpent vibes of this Pokemon. So that is ultimately how I would go ahead and make Snivy's evolution a little more interesting, but with that said, let's go ahead and get to the next starter. Delphox is who I want to tackle next, and if you are someone who has watched my channel in the past, you probably know that I'm not a fan of Delphox, and it's also just not the most popular starter Pokemon in general, so at the risk of beating a dead horse, we're just gonna skip the critiques this time, and I'll just go straight ahead and show you what we've come up with for a new Breaks in Evolution. This is Necronard, and if I'm being completely frank, I would have taken this about 1,000,000 times over Delphox. In an effort to make it its own Pokemon separate from Delphox entirely, Necronard is a fire ghost type, and it is based on a necromancer, which is in order to tie into the RPG theme that the Kalos starters have, but also at the same time, it's still something that is tangentially related to the witch theme that starts to come out a little bit with Breaks In, so it still feels like a natural progression from that Pokemon in my opinion. And while I said I would spare you the Delphox critiques, I will say that as a result of what I don't like about Delphox, I knew that I wanted this design to feel a lot more sleek and slender. I didn't want any clothes elements overpowering the design like a certain someone, and I didn't want it to hold any stick wands or anything like that. Instead, I wanted these kinds of elements to be more streamlined and to feel much less forced. That is why you see things like its tail that also wraps up and doubles as a hood, or its fur robes that are on its legs that, yeah, are there, but they don't dominate or overpower the design. You've also got its ghostly flames that demonstrate its origins and illustrate its fire typing like so many other fire starters also have, but it uses the supernatural nature of the Pokemon in order to incorporate and accomplish this instead of forcing a literal stick into its hands. It might just be my personal taste, admittedly, but I think this is a much better way of doing the whole Fox Warlock idea than what we ended up getting with Delphox. I think even the name turned out really cool too, since Necronard has a cool sound to it in my opinion, while also being accurate to the Pokemon, as it comes from Necromancer and Renard, which is the French word for fox. So I think this would be a much better way for Fennekin's evolution to go, but what do you guys think? Do you like these alternate evolutions, or do you prefer the originals? Let me know in the comments, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more. I'll see you soon with another video as well. Thanks so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.